Hello, friends, and welcome to this webinar on the history of relational skills brought to you by Thrive Today and Life Model Works. My name is Christy Harang. I'm Director of Operations for Thrive Today and your host for our time together. And on behalf of both of our teams, we just want to thank you so much for being with us. So we have a treat. We're being joined by Dr. Jim Wilder and Marlene Allen from Life Model Works and Chris and Jen Coursey from Thrive Today. I'll introduce them in a moment. But first, I just want to give a little context for our webinar today and why we put this together. So if you're not familiar with both Thrive Today and Life Model Works, Life Model Works is a nonprofit ministry that links together modern day brain science and the Bible to create resources and tools for churches so that they can, number one, be able to build multi-generational community. Number two, live with greater awareness of and connection to Emmanuel. And number three, be able to develop key brain skills that are essential to healthy relationships and transformation. Now, Thrive Today specifically focuses on training people and teaching people about these relational skills, which are what we're talking about today, so that people can have healthy relationships and thrive in life and connection with God and others. And so one of the questions we get a lot with people who know of both of our ministries is, are you guys the same thing? Are you different? Are you the same? How are you related? And so we wanted to help answer that question, but that's intricately tied to this history of relational skills. So we're going to be diving into the rich story of these skills today, which should be a lot of fun and hopefully shed some more light on the relationship and connection between our two ministries. So I'm excited to introduce our panelists. Again, from Life Model Works, we have Dr. Jim Wilder and Marlene Allen. Dr. Wilder is the founder and chief neurotheologian of Life Model Works, and for over 30 years, he's been training leaders and counselors around the world, and it's his work that's the foundation of Thrive Today. So, Dr. Wilder, thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, it's great to be with you. Is saying hello a relational skill?
Yes, let's call
Oh,
it
good.
that. Thank you. And we also have Marlene Allen joining us. And Marlene learned or was introduced to Life Model Works when she was serving for 16 years as a missionary in Southeast Asia. And so she now serves as the executive director of Life Model Works. And she's going to specifically be joining us for the second half of our webinar, where we talk a little bit more about what's going on with Life Model Works right now and how you can be involved. So Marlene, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you. And that's another relational skill.
Yay! Thank you, Marlene. We also have Chris and Jen Coursey from Thrive Today joining us. They are the founders of Thrive Today. Chris serves as our president, and he also is one of the developers of our 5-day premier training of relational skills. So Chris, thanks for being with us.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here, Christy. I'm glad all of our friends are here. Really looking forward to our time together.
Wonderful. It's so fun introducing you all and saying hi to you. This is wonderful. And we have one more yet. And not last but not least, we have Jen Coursey. So she serves as the executive director of Thrive Today. And she has been part of relational skills and the part of the history from the beginning and has been involved in our 5-day training from the very beginning. So it will be fun to hear her insights into this whole story. So Jen, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. Good to be with you all today.
Wonderful. All right, well, before we dive into what we're talking about today, I want to mention that we're going to try to keep this webinar pretty short, so we're not going to be doing formal Q&A. If you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. We have an administrator in there who will answer them if she can. Otherwise, you can email us at info@thrivetoday.org. So with that, Chris and Jen and Dr. Wilder, you guys are welcome to join me. And I just would love to kind of start from the beginning. And Dr. Wilder, I'm wondering if you can start by sharing what you were doing with Life Model Works before relational skills were a thing, and this process of what led you to identifying these skills and naming them.
Yes, well, the short story is that we were asking the question, why do some people recover and sustain the recovery and other people aren't? And the ones that were recovering well had a group of people that sort of worked like a second family, a spiritual family of some sort. But the question is, what were they getting from that? It was sort of reminded me of the limeys in the British Navy. They were eating limes and that kept them from getting scurvy, but what was in it, we didn't know. And so eventually vitamin C emerged. So we're trying to look for the vitamin C in here. Like, what do you get from relationships with people that makes such a big difference? And so just then this brain science was coming out. And as a direct answer to prayer, that's another nice long story, but God sort of miraculously said, here's the brain science, have a look at it. And we realized that the brain has to learn how to be a person. And if some of those relational skills were missing, then everything you try to do with people doesn't produce joy. It's just like not working somehow. So people become a big frustration instead. And you learn these things all basically by the time you're 4 years old in a bonded relationship. And so the question came up, is it possible to learn it later in life if you didn't get it early enough? And that was completely unknown in 1998 when we came across the brain science. So that's where we were. We found the answer. We realized maybe it's too late for everybody, but what if it isn't?
Yeah. And so just really quick, when you talk about recovering, can you talk about some of the things that you're seeing people recover from, just some context of issues that you're trying to help people rebound and recover out of?
Yeah, well, the number one thing is depression. I mean, people were just depressed and anxious and not functioning in their daily life, just like they couldn't keep things going. For me personally, Kitty had been through every kind of antidepressant there was. And, she got more side effects from them than she got benefits. And it was hard for her to do relationships. And so, in my personal life, I'm thinking, as there's got to be a better solution to this. And then you find the brain science of joy and okay, this is, if this would work, to help somebody who's depressed, somebody who, she was terribly afraid of talking to people. You couldn't get her in public. I couldn't get her to talk in small groups. All
That's
those
hard to
things that make you
imagine.
withdraw. Yeah, because you met her after the
Yeah.
brain skills. Yes, I know. Yeah. Then she wanted me to give her a microphone of her own for Christmas. Like I want to talk. But we're getting ahead of the story.
Okay, so you're seeing people struggle. You're reading the brain science. Okay, is there hope? Can we help people develop these skills? So how did you go about? I mean, there's 19 skills plus our special skill 0. How did you go about discovering these, tracking them down, putting names to them?
First of all, we went through the brain science and we didn't have skills yet. We had procedures. These are things you have to learn to do. And in a relationship with someone else, you have to be able to look in their eyes, engage with them, and build joy for about 6 to 10 seconds, and then look away and practice this and repeat it. But you only do that with someone that you're attached to. So the problem was I'm trying to figure out the experiment. So who do I get to practice with Kitty that she's got a relationship with? And just kind of do this enough. I mean, we have the description. Here's a mother and a baby. Okay, so we're not going to be holding somebody in their arms and looking down, and can't breastfeed her, and all these sorts of things. So what are the essential things, and who can you do them with? And right about that time, we met this Chris Coursey chap, from another ministry, and Kitty really took a liking to him, sort of looked at him like a son. And we have 2 sons about the same age, and she thought, I could really work with this guy. So At the same time, it was about the time of 9/11 at this point. So people had stopped going to conferences. And we thought, the only conference worth trying would be one that would try to train these skills, but what would we do? And so Chris can probably tell the story, but he came out to California with his team, and we set up sort of this lab to see if we could come up with experiences at that point that would transfer the skills. How they got to be numbered later on was when this Jen Coursey lady showed up. She organized it all, but again, we're getting ahead of the story.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, perfect setup. So Chris, why don't you jump in?
Yes. In fact, some of my favorite memories of those early years were spending time with Jim and Kitty and practicing these exercises. Jim had these brilliant ideas for being able to learn these skills and practice these exercises. And I can remember just practicing some of those in the early days. And I knew something deep is happening here. I wasn't quite sure what all it was, but I knew, wow, this is good. Like there's something growing here. And I could feel it. It was changing me. And I had been working with people coming out of a lot of hard stuff in their background, lots of traumas. And I remember reading Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You, and met Jim in some of those early years that Jim was talking about the brain and how the brain runs on the fuel of joy. And I remember thinking to myself, he just explained my life. Like he explained my family, my church, like he just explained my life. It just made so much sense after learning what Jim was teaching. And yeah, I was just trying to kind of bumble my way and helping people get on their feet. And so working with Jim and Kitty in those early years, Jim had this idea that, yeah, let's practice training these skills. And I was part of a fellowship and kind of had a little bit of a community around me. So I had a chance to practice these exercises with other people. And then I would, report back to Jim what I was seeing and what was happening. And I can remember some of those reports saying, Jim, so-and-so smiled today for the first time. I've never seen this person smile before. And so-and-so, has been practicing this, and, she's now working for the first time in 20 years. Just these testimonies of, what was happening and what was growing as I was just practicing the exercises that Jim had come up with. And, I knew we were onto something. I knew that there's something here. But I also knew that I needed to keep learning this myself as I was, being able to start working with Jim. I knew I had a little bit of a learning curve here, a big learning curve in my own life. So just practicing these things in my own life, being able to practice them with other people, it's like turning on a lamp and lighting up the room. Like there's something really important happening here.
Wow, very cool. Well, Jen, why don't you jump in of where you came into this process, and maybe you can even give us, because I know this was very transformative for you personally, but even an example of like a practice that you notice, if I'm not putting you on the spot, but a practice that you're like,
fine.
wow, this is affecting me. And remind everybody, you're experimenting at this point, right? We're just kind of like testing the waters. It's just really cool to hear the behind the scenes on all of this.
Yeah, I came in, right. Well, I actually came into the picture in that I was part of the group that Chris was practicing on in the community that he was working in. And I was there largely because I was having struggles of my own. I was struggling with a lot of depression. I was not, kind of came into it relatively non-functional. And when I was introduced to the life model, the maturity skills, these practices, it became clear, this is what's missing. This is why I can't sustain joy, or really don't know how to do joy at all. This is why I run myself till I'm exhausted and collapse at night to go to sleep, because I don't know how to quiet, which is another one of the relational skills. So on that question of like, what has been transformative? Well, it's all been transformative, but the learning how to quiet myself has probably been the biggest single thing that has impacted me. Although it's hard to say that it's just one, but I just didn't know how to quiet. I mean, my idea, I was hyper functioning in college. At one point, I was taking 20 credits and doing and working and TAing for a class. And my idea of resting was watching a movie while grading calculus papers for the class I was teacher assisting for. Like that was as quiet as I knew how to get, aside from running myself to exhausted and falling asleep. And so quiet was one of the harder skills for me to learn because I had very little to nothing on file. But as I started doing little increments of that practice, it started transforming me. It started transforming my day-to-day life, my experience, my capacity, my ability to sustain things rather than just like be super high functioning and then crash. And I got to be involved so a little bit in the pre-days before the first Thrive training, but then I got to be part of the first Thrive training, which is actually when sparks flew between Chris and I. He asked me out for our first date at the end of that week. So the Coursey marriage relationship kind of lines up with this roughly the same date as the Thrive launch. The first
The
training.
dangers of joy right there.
Yeah,
The
that's
dangers
right.
of joy.
That's right.
Proceed at your own risk.
Yes.
So to clarify, okay, you're getting into our next point is when you actually you did some experiments, you're testing the waters, and then I know you guys are wanting to experiment. Can we see these skills pass from adult to adult? And you put together this 5-day training. Were the skills like named and numbered at this point? Okay, so this is even pre that. Perfect. So just talk a little bit about what the training, like what led you to, okay, let's do this training, and how that led to be known as like Thrive training, right? Because that's essentially what became Thrive training.
So let me jump in with this
Please.
first, because I'm
Yes.
sort of sorting all this out as we go. And so we've got Chris experimenting with Kitty and practicing together, and I see her doing better, and she's starting to go off of the antidepressants. Her anxiety is getting down. She's functioning well. In fact, by the second, I think, Thrive, some friends of mine who are presidents of a college said, "We've seen the change in Kitty. I don't know what you're doing, but we'll offer you the head of the psychology department in our college if you'd come and teach whatever it is that you're doing, because it's making such a big difference in people's lives." Well, now, it's one thing to find out that you can get two people to do it, so Chris and Kitty can make it work, but can you make it work in the group? So he's going back and experimenting with his group, and Jen is one of the members of the group that he's experimenting with, and he's coming back and telling me, "Oh, this worked, this didn't work, this is how," so we're getting the procedures down, we're figuring out the order we have to do them in. In our counseling center where we're dealing with trauma victims, we found almost everyone that we helping with trauma got hospitalized at some point because they were depressed. But we thought, well, let's see if we can teach them joy and peace to begin with. And since that's the big stimuli, and if they had no one to build joy with, well, we said, well, get yourself a golden retriever or some kind of a dog like that and practice. You want to learn quiet, get a cat, and practice with the cat if you can't do with people. We had somebody who we sent them to a Alzheimer's unit to do joy, because she could walk into the room, they go, "Hi, oh, good to see you," walk out the door, come back in, "Hi, good to see you." They'd forgotten she was there 10 minutes before. It was kind of the perfect solution. It was good for the Alzheimer's unit. It was good for this person, who, by the way, as far as we know, was never hospitalized again after that. So we're seeing these remarkable things going on. And that first time that we had the first Thrive, which, by the way, we were working on the Bible verse of the abundant life. So how would you say abundant life? Well, in different language, because it was kind of, used up by the church, oh, the abundant life again, when you hear about that. So how about the thriving life? And that's how Thrive came in. And a little while later, a big major insurer decided they were going to call their program Thrive as well, because it's sort of catching on. I don't know, but it was just that kind of concept. You're growing well. You're finally getting green leaves again, So this is the context. The first time we tried to train all the skills in 1 week. A disaster. Everyone was exhausted beyond comprehension. Then we, slowed it down to eventually, we were working on it over 3 years. So from 1 week to 3 years, you can see how we learned from our experience. And along the way, Chris is now trying to organize this. And about that time, he and Jen were becoming extremely serious. And I'll let you take over from there because Jen had a background in education, and she thought there got to be a better way of doing what we're doing here.
Yeah, I remember when the first couple of trainings that I was involved in that they ran, everybody was asking, "This is amazing. What exactly am I learning? Like, it feels great, and I know I'm learning something, but what am I learning?" And the answer was something really good for you, but I don't know exactly how to describe it without going into like a long neuroscience explanation. So how can we find some way to simplify this and name what are we learning when we do this practice? And what order do we need to learn these in? How much of the basic building blocks do we need before we try to put some of the heavier building blocks on? What skills do we need before we can learn harder skills? And so I was asking a lot of those questions and helping them kind of flesh out what are the names of the skills we're learning? How much of them do we need to practice before we get into the harder ones? And which order do we need to practice them in? And then kind of breaking them out over the 3 years of training. So
and how many minutes do we need for each?
And how many minutes do we need of the number of minutes of training in year 1? How many of those minutes are going to go to joy? And how many of those minutes are going to go to quiet? And how many of those minutes are going to go to the other skills? So just a very intricate, down to the minute kind of planning out to make sure that by the end of the 3 years, people have built those foundations and they're not only learning these for themselves, but learning how to pass them on to others, because these are skills that hopefully would naturally pass on to others, but we want to make sure to emphasize how we can spread this to our group and our community. Yeah. So we did a major revision about 2005, 2006, right after Chris and I got married, and revised the whole training around those, how many minutes for each skill.
Were you guys running the training at this point, Chris and Jen?
Yeah, we were. And, one of the things that we were learning as we were identifying the skills and how many minutes for each skill, along the way, we kept learning about what was working, what wasn't working. So we kept refining the flow, refining the exercises. With every training that we ran, we just kept learning. There was just so much gold as we started doing this and just walking with people and watching people who over the years would come back and do the next training track. So it was really fun just to see the practices continue to improve and be refined. And it helps, for people to know we had nothing to compare this with. Like, there was nothing else out there that was doing this, that was training practical skills. So it kind of felt like such an adventure to be able to do this together and just watch something grow here. We had no idea where it was going, but we did, just something important's happening here. And it was fun to just see it keep changing and growing and improving.
And by this time, Kitty was so excited that she was wanting to be one of the trainers to teach everybody else what she'd been learning, that had changed her life. And pretty much that became the center of the team. These are things that have changed our life. We learned them. We didn't know how to do this before, and now we've learned how to learn it and how to teach it to somebody else. So the problem with people who had the skills is they couldn't appreciate how hard it was to learn or how you go about learning it. So actually, inadvertently finding that we start with people who don't have the skills, they learn them, they actually become the best trainers because they're really involved with that. And by that point, we're giving them names, and Jen gave them each a number and a sequence. And so now, when we ended up counting them, they came up to 19, and we thought, well, should we make it 20 just so it sounds like a round number? And we thought, well, no, let's stay with 19. That's how many there are. And And eventually we did come up with another one that I guess got called Skill Zero, because it's sort of been packaged in with some other ones. But that's been the fun discovery process for it. And it became the high point. Training this skill and watching other people learn it became, I think, the high point for all of our years. This is the best week of the year, is the week we get to practice this stuff. Took all the lectures out of it, put them on video, eventually put them on online classes, and but the training, that still is the wonderful moment when we really do feel like we're thriving.
Yeah. Well, and it's wonderful. If you've been, it's a pretty awesome experience to be there. But Dr. Wilder, you took off. Can I ask you one more question? Because you hit on something that I just wanted you to address really
Oh my
quickly.
goodness, yes, all that.
Okay, thanks for coming back. You hit on the point that when you don't have these skills, you appreciate it in a way that it's harder to appreciate when you have them. And because of the fact you guys through Life Model Works are spreading skills, their sister ministries have, are spreading skills in some way, shape, or form. One of the things we do get from people sometimes, because you guys are always referring people to the 5-day training, especially leaders, but sometimes people feel like, oh, well, I already know these. I've already gotten them. Like, what's the benefit to me? And I just wanted to see what you would say to somebody who's feeling that way, being suggested to go to a training, but feeling like they don't have a felt need for it because they've learned enough already.
Well, there's two things that I'd say. One is having the skills doesn't really teach you how to train anybody else with them. So we're going to remediate things. We have to know the procedures, and there's nothing like practicing that to go about it. The second thing is, over the years, now a couple of decades, I've kept track of the people who said, I want to really bring the life model to the world. And everyone who has gone through the training has stayed in the business. He's stayed involved with teaching life model things to the world. The people who have not gone through the training in about 3 years or so tend to burn out. And that is, to me, I think, just because they're not clear enough on what they need to be able to do and practice, whatever their weak points are not clear enough in their own minds that they remediate it. And so they end up going, this just isn't giving me the yield to process. It's just getting to be too hard to teach all of this. So I would say for those two reasons, one is if you want to know how to teach others that don't have it, you want to be able to do this. And it helps you, especially track 3, to say, here's exactly what they need to learn out of all the skills. Which one do you want? Okay, we have to teach you this one. And the second, to practice it and be really good at it yourself, to sort of at it, being really proficient and be able to stay in this business, you have to have had the additional practice that brings that clarity. It's like going to music camp and really practicing your instrument. After that, you feel like a pro at this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that because I feel like too, the more I learn, I feel like the more I get out of it. The more potential there is to gain more insights. But I also feel like even now being a trainer, having gone through the training, I feel like there are things that I didn't have sensitivity toward in people's journey and what they needed and what it looked like to tenderly care for them in their journey that I didn't appreciate the way and I'm sure I can even grow more in that. So I'm so thankful for how the trainings really taught me to be really tenderhearted with people and care for them along their journey and process. So yeah, thank you so much. That's really helpful. All right, well, we are going to shift gears, and Jen, we're gonna bring Marlene on to talk a little bit about where these ministries are headed, but can you give us the CNN highlights of how we went from THRIVEtoday being under Life Model Works, Thrive training, to now what we have is THRIVEtoday and Life Model Works being intricately connected ministries, but separate ministries?
Sure. We actually functioned under Life Model for 10 plus years, running the Thrive training under their umbrella and loving getting to coordinate with them and collaborate with them. And in 2017, we decided that we with Life Model decided that it would actually be best to launch us as a separate nonprofit. Life Model has a big vision, and we have kind of a big vision that's very specific. And so what we want to do at Thrive is train people in relational skills. And one of the reasons we call ourselves the practice people. So they launched us as our own standalone nonprofit ministry at the beginning of 2018, to focus on that one piece that we wanted to have laser focus on. So, and we have continued to partner with them on things, and we'll go more into that here shortly. But that's kind of how we transitioned from working together under Life Model to working together as two separate standalone ministries.
Perfect. Thank you, Jen. All right, so we are caught up modern day, and we want to invite Marlene to chat with us about Life Model work. So Marlene, I'm thinking you stepped in. Has it been almost a year since you stepped in?
Well, I came on staff June 1st, and
Okay.
then August 1st, Ray officially passed the baton to me. So already it's been a year sitting just in this position and helping. So
That's
it's an
wonderful.
exciting journey.
That's so great. So I would love to have you share with our audience a little bit about the current mission and vision of Life Model Works and how someone could be involved if they want to get more involved with what you guys are doing.
Okay, that's easy. But I have to say this, guys, I love hearing the history. And I love especially the proof of content stories. You know, this Life Model does work. And so every story that we have like that is so important for others to hear. And it stirs my heart and inspires me. It's like, yes, this is a good thing that we're doing here. But, you know, when I think about just what we're all are doing, you know, Jim asked this question often. He's always asked this, what is God growing in you? And, you know, I have to turn that around as what is God growing in Life Model Works? We're a new team, you know, as a new executive director, and this new people have joined the staff. Michael Sullivan, Michael Hendricks have been there for a while. Jen Filer, Claudia has come on for the Spanish speaking population, which I love that. And our new administrative assistant, Jennifer. But, you know, first of all, for us, it is what is God growing in us? Because as you know, as kind of the parent ministry of the Life Model, I just so want us to model everything that we're preaching, and they do hear that from me often. But this Life Model family, when I talk about the Life Model family, that includes everybody. That's partner ministries, that's Thrive Today, Deeper Walk, that's all of us donors, and that's friends who just follow and love what we do. And whether they're learning through a podcast, another ministry. And what's amazing is people will say, well, I heard about you from such and such. I say, who is that? And so, but that's what it takes. That's what it takes for this relational movement. And I'm so grateful for the history and what Thrive Today and Jen and Chris have poured in to Life Model Works. They've laid a great foundation and provided this great training so that we can see further things expanding. But to think about Life Model Works, you know, it's when I say again, you know, I say the Life Model kind of started in Life Model Works, and I listen to what Jim says. There's a responsibility on us to kind of set guardrails, because the three concepts you mentioned earlier, the multi-generational living, multi-generational living, Emmanuel living, and the relational skills, they have to work together. And we just kind of want to guard so that someone isn't just picking up one and says, oh, this is great stuff. Let me go create a ministry with this. Because we're finding more and more, even since I've sat in this chair, I'm finding, oh, wait, we need the other parts of the package. It's so important that those three, that they've been identified. And so part of the Life Model Works is just kind of guarding that in a sense. But I want to say that I'll say set guardrails to say, hey guys, it'll work. You'll get a whole lot better fruit if you work all three of those together. The multi-generational piece is more widespread than it sounds, because we're being very intentional as we step out into new things after 54 years. It's like, okay, guys, how does this intentionally affect young people and marginalized communities? And what do the elders in our community need to look like for when those young people join us? So it's about increasing the audience diversity. And this is a lifelong journey. So for those who are saying, hey, I know this already, then I would say, oh my goodness, there are deeper revelations for us. Things you've learned 5 years ago or journal 5 years ago, God has fresh things to take another onion layer off that brings us to this fullness of life. There are more treasures to be mined, but especially with elders. For those who have been following any one of our ministries for a long time, my focus and a Life Model Works focus is like elders. What do we need to do? If I say I know this already, then am I ready to teach it? Am I passing it on to a younger person and watching them grow in it? Just like we've heard the testimonies of what's happened in our past. That's for all of us. Um, I'm just trying to think of some of the new things that we're not new things, but I don't need to think of new things. We've got great resources at Life Model Works that I'm just asking, let's repackage that because some of it needs to be repackaged for a younger generation. They've read some of our things and they're like, even a 30-year-old has said, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, ooh. So we need to just kind of reframe the languages on some of our resources to reach that wider audience. And of course, partnership is a big deal for me. And I think you've heard it since I've been in this chair, is that partnering with all of the ministries that are running with this concept is so important. All of us, we get to model what this looks like. What does it look like to partner with another ministry without competition? This is without jealousies. And we're actually sending people, oh, you need to go to Thrive Today for that. Oh, you need to go to Deeper Walk for that. And I love that part. And I think the world and the rest of the church needs to see ministries operating like that. That's a very exciting part for me.
Wow.
And lastly, probably not lastly, but Jim Wilder, for Dr. Wilder, we just want to give him space so that he can partner, he can create with other neurotheologians. That's a big deal as we find out who are those people that are in the same stream that get to collaborate together and they get to be the thought leaders together. And whatever comes out of that will definitely affect us. There are hot conversations everywhere about church hurt, and that's a big deal as far as if we are going to start reaching the younger generation, then we have to be ready for that conversation because too many of them are in that circumstance and they're hurting. I say, man, the whole life model that is found in Thrive Today and Life Model Works and all of our partner ministries has the answers to help alleviate that. So you can kind of see, when you say where are we headed, I'm kind of turning the ship a little, our attention a little bit, our focus a little bit. Younger people, diversity of races and ages, all of that has to be included, economic levels.
Yep.
And so that's does that answer your question?
Yeah, I love it. I love all of that. That's so great. And I love that you carried all of that before you came into this role, which is such a great fit for you. Because I know I've chatted
Yes.
with you before you were in the role, and this was all there. So it's wonderful
That's
to
right.
see you stepping into this role. Thank you, Marlene. And I'm going to share in a minute some resources that you guys can look at with Life Model Works to learn more. And
Yeah.
Jen, I would
And
love
if I could just add,
yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, if I can just add one thing, because
Yeah.
I know when we talk about resources, there is, and we all have our libraries. I keep finding myself saying this, no matter what resources that you find on our website, I've been encouraging people, find the book and then find JoyStream. And as you find a concept, you'll be able to find a video, most likely a video that'll help you understand that concept, as well as you'll find other things that you'll be mentioning about our study groups and the leaders collectives. I love that leaders get a chance to be in a cohort with other leaders and just being iron that sharpens iron as they process those skills. So I'll let you tell them about the other things that we have. One thing that's not on that list that I saw is the one we've been talking about a lot lately with the Life Model Community Platform, where
Oh,
people can find it, but they can find that on our website, but they'll be able to find each other because you can't do this alone. You get to find people in your geographical region as well as your area of interest. It's in the formative stages, only about 200 or so people are on there, but the goal is to have the multitudes on there finding each other and beginning to process this together. But I'm excited to partner with Thrive Today. Thanks for having me.
oh, you're welcome. So good to have you, Marlene. Thank you. So with that, Jen, why don't you give us a little update on what's new with Thrive and how someone can be involved with what we are doing right now?
Sure. I got to share a little bit already that our kind of laser focused desire is to see people practicing and learning these relational skills. And so that started out that the only place people could learn that was at the 5-day Thrive Premier training. But for years, we've been wanting to see that expanded. Now, the Thrive Premier is still our best place to learn these skills, but we, as well as Dr. Wilder and other ministry cohorts, people collaborate. I'm not saying the right word. People we've collaborated with. Yeah. Also have written a lot of books, and a lot of those books have exercises in them that people can practice. We have created online courses, online practice courses, so that people can have intentional steps to start practicing some of those building block skills, those building block relational skills. Really, our vision and mission at Thrive is to see people thriving in relationships. And what we want to do is be able to equip them, equip families, individuals, communities with those relational skills that they need in order to thrive. And so that's a big part of, really, that's kind of the underlying impetus behind everything that we do. And we're looking for ways to spread that further, to make it more accessible, because for years people have told us not everybody can come to the 5-day Thrive training, and we know that. So how can we get people started on the relational skill journey, even if they can't make it there? Or how can we have resources that people can bring back with them to their communities from the Thrive Premier training, so that they can start working in groups around them and have what they need to really start spreading that in their area of influence.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jen. Well, with that, I'm going to share a couple of key resources people could get started with, both for our ministry and for Life Model Works. Yeah, go ahead. Do you have one more?
One other thing I forgot to, because the other half of your question was, and how are we continuing to be connected with Life Model? So we just love getting to work with Life Model, with Jim, with Marlene, with both of the Michaels. We feel just so connected with them still. We feel like our visions overlap in so many ways that it's a very like-minded ministry, and we feel launched by them. So it's just, the connection is strong. So
yeah, it's a very healthy, beautiful, special connection that exists. We truly are partners with them. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, very quickly, we want to share a couple of things that you can do to learn more. If you are newer to relational skills, or maybe you're wanting to get a solid foundation or help other people with a solid foundation, I highly recommend our Foundational 5 Introductory course. This was put together covering 5 very foundational skills that are kind of the building blocks for other skills. You can go through this on your own, but we're also, for the first time, doing a summer group on this that I will be facilitating starting in June. It's a 5-week online group. So if you feel like you need the help of going through it with somebody, you can join us for that. There's a link down below, but you can also, we're going to send out an email. If you are watching this video, well, if you're watching it, you registered, so you will be getting an email. And if you're watching it after the fact, on like YouTube, we'll have all these links in the description to the video. Okay, sorry, next. And then we've already mentioned, actually we haven't mentioned this. So Chris wrote a book that has a chapter on each of the 19 relational skills. It's awesome. He is revising it right now, and that will be coming out this summer. But this is a fabulous resource to learn more and just get an overview of the skills, to hear stories about them. What does it look like to have the skill? What are some other resources? So keep an eye out for that this summer. And we already mentioned our 5-day Premier training. If this is something you're interested in or want to learn more about, you can go to thrivetoday.org/what-is-thrive. And we have 2 events coming up, one in Holland, Michigan this summer, and one in Denver this fall. And with Life Model Works, Marlene mentioned there's some various resources that they have. They have study groups that are going on, a leaders collective where you can really receive as a leader. And they also have consulting services for churches and organizations. So there's the QR codes here. Again, you'll get an email with these links, and you can check that out if you would like to learn more. Oh, actually, there was one more slide. Apologize about that. Also, just in general, if you want to learn more about any of our ministries, we have our websites here, thrivetoday.org, lifemodelworks.org, and also our emails if you have any questions for us. All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody for being with us. I don't know if our panelists could come back really quick and just thank you so much, you guys. This was always a delight to be with you guys. In fact, Dr. Wilder, my very first webinar was with you, and I was so nervous because I'm like, why do I have to do my first webinar with Dr. Wilder? And it was delightful. I had so much fun, and it was really fun to have you here, and Marlene and Chris and Jen. It was just fun to be with you all. So thank you so much for joining with us. And it was because I was nervous, Dr. Weller, not because I didn't want to be with you. Let me clarify on that point.
Yes, that's quite, your first day on any kind of a job, working is going to give you a little nervous.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Just wanted to be clear. So anyway, we really appreciate you guys being with us and sharing with us today. And for our audience, thanks so much for being with us. We hope you enjoyed the story and learned something. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us. We have someone requesting a prayer send-off. Would someone say a quick prayer for us as we conclude? Chris,
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Thank
So, Lord God, I just thank you, Lord. Lord, this story is about you and just an idea you put in Jim's mind. And here we are, Lord, 20 some years later. And Lord, countless lives have been touched and are continually being touched by what you're doing. We thank you that you're a relational God and that we all can learn these things, Lord. And so we bless you. We thank you for this time. I just pray, Lord, you'd be with each person that watches this live or watches it later. And thank you for your goodness. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Right. We hope you have a great day. Thanks
Bye,
again for
everybody.
being with us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.